Okay, I'm going to call the Berlin-Boylston Regional School Committee, Regional Transitional School Committee to order. And before we get started, I'd like to make a few comments for everyone who is in attendance. Christy, my participants list says there's about 130 people. Is that accurate?
Yes, looks like I have 115 attendees and 14 panelists.
Okay, all right, great. For everyone listening tonight, I want to say thank you for being here this evening. And thank you for participating in this process, which is a challenge for every member of the community and every member of the school community. To put this meeting in perspective in relationship to the other night, on Tuesday night, the committee had the superintendent present his plans, and the school committee had an opportunity to have a conversation with the superintendent so that he could flesh out the thinking of his administrative team, himself, and all who participated in the process. And the committee, I believe, had a robust discussion about that plan. And the committee will be taking a vote at tomorrow night's meeting on supporting or not supporting the superintendent's recommendation. So tonight's meeting fits in the middle, in that we have an opportunity for the superintendent to address the parents about their concerns and to anticipate questions that they've had and to flesh out for them. We have a series of questions that were gathered, and thanks to everyone who participated in gathering those questions from parents. We have seen some email within the last 24 hours, I think it is, where some parents suggested perhaps some students had some questions they'd like to have answered. And hopefully, although I have not ascertained who made these questions, hopefully some of these questions reflect concerns that students may have shared with their parents. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Jeff, and Jeff and Christy are going to, I believe, and Jeff will correct me if I'm wrong, they will use that document that was created by those parents as a framework for him trying to answer questions for parents. So Jeff, did I get that right?
You did.
All right.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity for us to answer more of your questions. I know we get more questions every day, and hopefully if you have something that doesn't get answered tonight and it's very, very specific about your child, you can call one of the principals or myself, and we can try to answer it for you. In some cases, you did send a questionnaire, it was very specific, and we did try to reformat it to answer it in a general sense. So we're going to get going with this. Christy's going to read the questions. There's 100+ questions, so it might take some time. We'll try to be brief. So Christy, if you want to get started.
All right, our first question tonight is, when will we know the plan for school?
Well, we posted a draft, as I mentioned Tuesday night in my closing statement. I made a change in the hybrid model that I was going to propose and negotiate with the union on the next day, on Wednesday, and I did that, and I think we have a tentative agreement. There's still a few things to hash out, but we have posted the draft on our website. Again, this is the draft just for the hybrid model, which we will open the school year with. Originally, we had a hybrid that was 1 week in school in front of teachers, 1 week remote with teachers. that has been changed to a cohort model, which looks like cohort A is in front of teachers for Monday and Tuesday. And cohort B will be in front of teachers on Thursday and Friday. Wednesday will be more of an administrative day and a planning day for teachers. On the days that students are not in front of a teacher, they will be doing some independent work at home. And I'm just going to ask Carol Carol, do you want to flesh that out a little bit? I don't want to spend too much time on it because we'll be talking about it tomorrow. But is there anything additional you wanted to, any other details you want to talk about?
I don't. I think we had a great conversation with the union representatives the past 2 days, and I think we've come to, I guess, a consensus, a kind of a sense of compromising on some things, talking about over some concerns, and I think we're in a good place going forward. I just there are a few changes, and we're going to address those today to the model that you see currently on the website, and we're cleaning that up, making those revisions, and we'll be voting on that newly revised one tomorrow evening.
Thank you. Christy, I think we can go to the next one.
Okay. Rumor has it that school will start 10 days late. Could you please address this as parents need to plan?
Okay. That's not a rumor. That's really happening. The MTA and the Commission of Education negotiated a 10-day delay in the start for students. That will give teachers time to do some professional development. This is very new to all of us, and we're going to need all of that time to make sure everybody's familiar with the safety protocols and the new schedules that are in place. This does mention something about the calendar here. The committee voted on a calendar on Tuesday, and that's my fault. I meant to pull that calendar out because I knew there had to be some changes, so there will be a revised calendar for tomorrow night for the committee to vote on. So I know that calendar got posted. There won't be many changes to it, but look for the vote on Friday, and we will repost the new calendar, and we'll have it on our website by Monday.
All right, next question. If a parent in the house needs to quarantine due to the mass travel restrictions, will the children in the household still be allowed to go to school during the quarantine period?
We're going to follow the governor's recommendations on that, but certainly we'll try to be flexible. If that happens, please let us know. Today, John Hopkins published a list by state of the positivity rates, and I think there were about 13, Massachusetts being one, that is under 5%. Some of them are upwards of 20, 25%. So if it does happen, please give us a call. We don't anticipate that happening much. We're hoping everybody is cautious, but if it does happen, call me directly and we'll make a decision on an individual basis on that. But know that we will be using the governor's recommendations. If you go to a hot spot and you mingle with people, your children probably would not be able to come back to school. So, but again, we're going to try to be flexible about it. We want kids in school.
Okay, next question. I have one child at BES and one in Tohoto. If BES needs to close due to a COVID case, will Tohoto remain open?
Tohoto in that scenario would remain open as long as the reason for the close of BES wasn't the brother. So if you had one child at BES and another child at Tohoto, and the reason we had to close BES is because of that child, is because of one of those siblings, then we would naturally have to close down Tohoto also because they had close contact.
Okay, if my BES child is diagnosed with COVID, will my other child still be allowed to go on site to Tohoto?
Nope.
Okay. If myself or my husband are diagnosed with COVID, will both children still be allowed to go on site to their respective schools?
No.
If an individual child is not allowed to go on site to their respective school due to potential COVID exposure, how will this be addressed for remote learning? Is it similar to sick time where a student can do what they can and catch up later?
Yeah, it'd be handled exactly that way. And actually, there's another question that addresses this. So if you could just hold on for one question, I will get to some more details.
Okay. If a child is diagnosed with COVID and has extreme symptoms, is there a plan in place on how to bring them back up to speed on the curriculum of the rest of the class after being put out for multiple weeks or months?
I thought it was two questions away. It's right here. Typically, on the 15th day, normally, if a student gets sick and they're out, if they're really sick, on the 15th day, we get that student a tutor. So the same thing would happen here. If a student is diagnosed with COVID-19, is positive, needs to be out, we would provide a tutor.
Okay. If one teacher or child comes down with the virus, does everyone in the class need to quarantine at home for 2 weeks?
I feel as if one teacher or child comes down, okay, in that case, we would shut down the entire school and go remote. It's just, and again, the reason for this is we try to have cohorts as much as possible and not have students intermingle. The problem is there are certain parts of the day, like busing, for example, in which buses pick up by street and they don't pick up by class, they don't pick up by alphabet. So on any given bus, you could have a student from the 2nd grade, 5th grade, 4th grade, and to contact trace that back would be almost impossible. So, you know, if somebody gets sick in the school, we close down the entire school.
Okay. What is the protocol for illness? So many similar symptoms with COVID versus a common cold. They could have a runny nose and cough just from dust or pollen or allergies. Do we draw the line at a fever?
What we're using, we just posted this. The Department of Education has a guideline. It's called the Protocols for Responding to COVID-19 Scenarios. And it talks about scenarios in the community, if something happens on the bus, if something happens in school, and it's based on guidance by the Massachusetts Department of Health. So we'll be using those protocols in school. We want to get you a copy so that you can take a look at it so you're not blinded like that. If your child is showing symptoms, it's pretty clearly laid out. Just go to the page and you just run down the checklist. So that's posted. Christy just posted that today to our website. So if you do take a look at that and you have a question about it, please give us a call.
Okay. What happens if a teacher becomes ill? Does everyone they've been in contact with quarantine?
Yes, in that case, again, any kind of issue like that where someone in a school becomes ill, we would shut down the whole school. And in fact, it would probably be a worse situation if it was a teacher, because they'll be moving more freely around the school, so the chances of them being in contact with more people are greater. So we would close the school.
Okay. In the event that school has to be canceled or an entire classroom will go remote due to a COVID positive case, what will the school day look like? Will it be the same or different as it was in the spring?
We're hoping it'd be much different than the spring. The Department of Education has come out with their new guidance on remote learning, and it's much more robust than what it was in the spring. It has nothing to do with the teachers, the administrators. It's just the spring was thrown at us, and we had to do the best we could. We have more guidance. Teachers have become much better at teaching remotely. Carol, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was just I'll add on to that. Just, I think the key words are structure. There'll be much more structure to the day. There'll be much more rigor and high expectations. As Jeff said, the commissioner has has let us know very clearly that those are his expectations for the schools this year if we go out and remote. And I think that this is something that the teachers have been considering and are planning to put in place. The other piece I think we're much more organized with is utilizing a single repository for assignments, for links. We mentioned it the other night that would be Google Classroom. So I think even knowing where to go for assignments and for materials will be much easier for parents to navigate, as well as obviously the students and teachers come fall.
Okay, we seem to have lost Jeff for a moment.
Oh, I'm here. Oh, yeah.
Well, I thank you for returning.
Okay, are we ready for the next question? If an adult in the house has to quarantine under the new mass travel restrictions, will the kids still be allowed to go to school, or must they remain home during the quarantine period?
Anything that has to do with the travel restriction will be using the governor's orders. And I can't give you a definite answer on it because those change. It depends what phase we're in. It depends what the positivity rate of the state is at that time. I think it's going to depend on where exactly someone travels to. So again, we'll follow the governor's recommendations. If that happens, give us a call and we'll deal with it individually. Our goal is to get the children into school. So I don't want to give you just an answer on that, like, no, we can't come back. So if it happens, let us know. Please don't travel.
If a child or a teacher becomes ill with COVID, how will it be assured that all who came in contact have been notified? In schools as small as ours, there is much crossover, especially if the same teachers are traveling into every classroom.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's why if one kid gets sick in school, the entire school will be closed. All the parents will be notified. And at that time, we'll talk about what we're going to do in terms of the remote learning and or whatever we're going to go to. You will know. I'll most likely do an all-call school message to the parents, and then followed by messaging from the principals.
How will we be effectively able to track COVID cases in our building when testing is still not a rapid turnaround?
I don't think there's a good answer to that. I mean, that's part of the issue. There's such a delay in the testing. Once someone tests positive, we close the school, and that's the best answer I can give for that. I was considering leaving that out for now, but I don't know if that answer would even change later on until the testing changes. That's all I got for that one. Sorry.
Has a requirement for a COVID test been considered for faculty and students prior to re-entry?
It's been considered at the state level. It's one of the things that the commissioners talked about, and then not the last update, but last week's update. It's still on the table. They are looking at it. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. It's not something we would do as a district, but certainly if the state has something they're going to offer, we would definitely do it. So we're still waiting on that.
Will kids be changing classrooms throughout the day? And if so, will desks be sanitized in between?
They won't be changing classrooms at the elementary school, but they will be changing classrooms at the middle school and the high school. And in that case, the desks will be cleaned thoroughly between classes.
And what chemicals will be used for cleaning?
We continue to use the same chemicals. We use one disinfectant, two disinfectants, and one hydrogen peroxide solution. We did start using a different disinfectant last year, which was the electrostatics. We used an electrostatic sprayer. We will post, we're going to post all of those chemicals online with the material safety data sheets, so you can look at them yourself. Again, we try to use things that that is green as possible, and it was one of the reasons we went to the electrostatic method of disinfection, because it used so much less chemical. And we continue to look for that stuff, regardless of COVID-19. We're always looking for a safer product. But we will have those posted. I talked to Mr. Pusateri today, our facilities manager, and he's in the process of getting those and getting them to Kristen. She'll post them.
What will the cleaning protocol look like throughout the day and at the end of each day?
All of the high touch surfaces are going to be cleaned thoroughly, and every night there'll be the buildings will be electrostatically disinfected, and there will also be the normal cleaning procedures that are in place.
Okay. Will there be mask breaks be taken? Where will they be taken?
Weather permitting, we'll take them outside. I mean, that's one of the reasons we bought the tents. We have two tents at the middle high school, one at each of the elementary schools. And so we're hoping at least when the weather is, when you can go out, that's where the mask breaks can take place. If not there, we're hoping to move them to some of the larger spaces in the building. Preferably outside. That's probably the best place. After wearing the mask for an hour, you probably need an outside break anyway.
Will soap dispensers be refilled daily?
The dispensers we have are the ones with the bags of soap in them, so they'll be checked regularly. As soon as they're out, they'll be replaced. So it's not the old school ones that they just fill up. So, but they will be checked regularly in the bathrooms and in the classrooms.
Will all the plumbing be operational with toilets that flush and hot water with the ability to run in all sinks? This applies especially to Tohoto.
I'm hoping this is the case even when there's no COVID-19, that all the toilets flush and there's hot water. But yes, they'll all be checked. And the only plumbing that we will turn off are the water fountains. So those will all be shut down. But you know, it is a good, if this did nothing else, it really gave us a push to check our plumbing, the toilets, the hot water, to make sure everything's in good shape. So that will be happening too.
Will paper towels be available for students and teachers to appropriately wash hands? Hand dryers, which are currently installed, are known to spread pathogens.
In the elementary schools, they're already using hand towels, and in the high school and middle school, and they have the hand dryers, they will be switching over to the paper towels. So, and I think those are already in place. If not, they will be when school opens.
Will we be an all mask district for the protection of all of our students as well as staff?
So originally our recommendation, we went with the state recommendation, which was for K and 1, that the masks are recommended but not required. But after a few days of discussion, I think most people believe that we should go with all masks, and that will be one of the things I asked the committee to vote on tomorrow. It'll be one of the changes in the plan.
Will there be any temperature checks in the morning?
No, I know the state has backed away from that. Parents should do this before the student leaves for school. If there is a parent that needs a thermometer, let us know, and we will get you one so that you can do this. We do have some that we've ordered, so we want to make sure everybody has what they need.
What type of PPE will be provided for students and staff? What are the health and safety protocols?
So we spent roughly $220,000 on PPE. We bought sanitizer, hand sanitizer, gloves, masks, gowns, eye protection, face shields. We bought everything on the recommended Department of Education list. As we go through this, there may be some other things that are specific to us. We have no problem purchasing something else. But right now we've ordered everything that was recommended by the Department of Education.
How can they safely take mask breaks?
I think we just addressed this. We're hoping to do it in, of course, always recognizing social distances, bringing students to open spaces when possible, and again, maintaining appropriate social distancing. You know, one of the things you have to remember at a cohort model, when half the students are in at any given one time, and any given time, there are classes that'll have 5 or 6 kids in them. They really could take the mask break in the class. There's a lot of room in those classes, especially when there's 5 students and 1 teacher. So once you go to that kind of model, there's a lot of open space in the schools.
Will mask usage be uniformly enforced in each classroom?
Yes, that will be one of our requirements, and I think it would actually be easier if tomorrow the school committee votes yes on masks for everyone. It will be more equitable, and it'll be much more easy to enforce.
Has air quality been tested in all classrooms, HVAC systems, and what improvements need to be made to get them in working order and safe condition?
We've had air quality tests in BMS because they've had some issues up there and have come back normal. But we're in the process of looking at the HVAC systems right now. I know Mr. Connery has, I think he's actually found a group that will be able to come in and test our HVAC system. So we'll have that done, and we'll let the community know the results and any repairs that we need to make. And that'll be done in all our schools.
Okay, I think you've covered these next 2 questions, but just to reiterate, will masks be required for all students, not just students in grades 2 and up?
Yes, you know, one of the things I didn't cover there, now that I'm looking at these questions, there will be some exceptions for documented medical cases. So, you know, there may be some students walking around thinking, well, that person doesn't have a mask, or that person. We'll be checking those closely to make sure that there's a reason. If there's a legitimate reason why someone should not have a mask on, then they won't.
Okay, and going up to number 33, will face shields be acceptable substitutes for masks?
No, they're not recommended by the CDC as an only use. So they can be used with a face mask, but not in place of as a substitute.
What has the Board of Health recommended for this plan? Do they have any adjustments that you will need to make to ensure safety for all?
We submitted our plan to the Board of Health, and we're still waiting. As soon as the committee votes on the votes tomorrow, we'll have something solid that we're going to open up with. And once I have that, I'll just bring it to them, and I'll bring it to them again and say, this is what we have. Before that, it was just, you know, kind of tentative plans. But we're hoping to get something in place tomorrow. Again, pending further guidance that we can bring to them and come to them with a solid plan that they can look through.
How will the district ensure no one is seated under an air vent?
Well, I think at the levels we have now, students in school, I think we can make sure students under a vent. It may not always be possible. Some of the students will, some of those classes may have an increase of, you know, we might not be able to do it, but we're going to try. We're going to try to do that. We think we can. We got, especially at half the students, we have pretty low numbers.
Okay, and here's another one about mask usage. Assuming classrooms are reconfigured with desks 6 feet apart, will students be required to wear masks while they are seated at their desks?
Yes. The new cohort model does place students at 6 feet apart, and we could actually do much better than that. And they will still be required to wear face masks.
Will windows be kept open to create as much of a cross breeze as possible?
This is something that's recommended, and we're going to try to do that. But one of the things we're going to also do is we're going to pursue this with the HVAC experts to come in the building, because one of the things they say is, you know, those systems most times are calibrated to run efficiently with the windows closed. So in the elementary schools, for example, they have univents, so they pull air directly from those. You've probably seen them. They look like, you know, kind of bookcases on the side of the room. They're made to pull air, fresh air directly from the outside. So once you open a window, that throws off the balance in the room and then throws off the balance in the school. So I think it really is a good time to talk to the HVAC experts on this and get their recommendation. So we'll be doing that.
Okay, and here's a similar question to one we had earlier. Will teachers and students be seated under vents?
Again, we'll try our best to make sure they are not. We think we can. We got very, very low numbers in the classrooms at this point. So at 6 feet, half the students at any given time, we have plenty of space. So we should be able to do that. I'm confident we can.
Okay, this question, I think we've sort of gone over this, but it says, can you guarantee 6 feet of physical distancing in the kindergarten and first grade classrooms, given that you will not be requiring them to have masks?
Okay, that was this, obviously the question came in before when it was a recommendation, but not a requirement. Once the school committee votes on a requirement, and they'll be able to, we will be able to have the 6 foot distancing with the mask in KN1. That's what we're hoping for.
Okay, will the 3 foot distance be changed to 6 feet since the CDC recommends maintaining at least 6 feet between all individuals, even those that are asymptomatic?
Yes,
Can social distancing be maintained both in classrooms and while eating lunch?
yes. And I think I'm gonna turn it over to the principals if I can, because they, I think they've worked out some lunch. Maybe you can go over your lunch practice, your new lunch protocols, and that might help some of the folks understand this.
Sure, Jeff, I'll start at Tohoto. So because of the hybrid model with half of the population, we'll maintain our 3 lunches. However, we will use 3 separate spaces. When weather permits, we will utilize the tents. We will also utilize the cafeteria, and then the gymnasium will also be utilized as a cafeteria. So when there is inclement weather, the gymnasium actually at 6 feet or more can actually hold 80 students, all facing the same direction. But we will not need to put that many students in the gymnasium. So those will be the 3 areas for the cafeteria. And Sally and I are extremely confident that that is more than enough with half of the population.
At Berlin Memorial, really similarly, we looked at a couple of different options. And now with kind of a decision made around the hybrid model and half the kids in, we're going to end up with groups of kids in the gym for lunch. Plenty of space. We'll separate kids by class, all facing forward, a lot like Mr. Siri just mentioned.
And at Boylston, a similar model. When I was looking at full return, I was planning on the gym. So now if I'm looking at half of those students, I can provide close to 12 feet. We probably won't go that far, but you can provide more than 6 feet of social distance. We also have large doors that we can open for ventilation, and an industrial fan that's mounted in the top wall that can bring fresh air in.
Okay, next question. What will class sizes be?
Under the proposed cohort style hybrid model that the committee's gonna vote on tomorrow, the average class size at BMS will be between 7 and 9 students, and the average classroom size at BES will be between 8 and 11 students, and at the middle high school, the class will be, so it's a big range, anywhere between 4 and 14 students, because they have things like AP classes, which are small to begin with. So pretty small class sizes.
When the high school students will be placed in cohorts, will they stay in one room and have teachers rotate to them all day?
No, it's almost impossible. You know what, Diane, can you answer that one?
Sure, absolutely. I just want to go back to the other question regarding class sizes. So in those classes where there are more than 12 students, even with half of our population, we will be having those classes meet in larger spaces like the auditorium or the multi-purpose room, because we have calculated that at 6 feet, the average classroom holds 12 students. So we'll be moving those. But to answer the cohort model, it's virtually impossible. And I've spoken with numerous principals across the state, and everyone is in the same situation, that because of the myriad of courses that are actually offered at the high school within each grade level, it is impossible to create cohorts and allow students to continue on their educational tracks that they are set on. So they will not be in cohorts.
Okay, will the school day end and start at the same time as before?
Under the new cohort model, it will begin and end in all schools at exactly the same time. This question came up, I think, in a lot of districts because of the busing. And a lot of once you change the once you say only one student per seat, the number of runs sometimes increase. And one, we have low numbers to begin with, but under the cohort model, we should have no problem. One of the things that if we had 100% ridership, for example, or if we were going to bring all of our students back and all of them decided to come back, and then we had seat students, one per seat, in that case, we would have to have our buses go loop back and pick kids up again, so that there would be some kids who were late. That's part of the reason that the commissioner gave us some flexibility with time on learning, realizing that there may be additional bus routes to get put in, and there'll be kids that are late. But in our case, we shouldn't have that problem. We won't. We will not.
Okay, going to question number 50. How will social skills be worked on when children can not go near each other? We're going to do that other question, Diane? 49? Oh,
You want me to take that one, Jeff?
Yep.
So social skills and all social interactions with the kids are going to have to look a little bit different. But social skills can be taught in a variety of different ways. And the most effective way really is when teachers are watching what the students are doing and can do some in-the-moment coaching and get involved with them. So they can still do. They'll do some modeling with them and turn taking. We'll also use some videotapes. So we won't have small groups of students working closely together like we have in the past, but there's other tools that we can use.
okay, have you considered use of the hillside gym to help space out students?
We considered that early on, but we realized that our numbers are way too low, so we won't need it. We'll be able to do what we have to do in our own buildings.
Okay, will students be expected to change for gym? And if so, what are the precautions being taken there?
They will not be expected to change out for gym. They'll be doing some low impact work, and I think on those days they're going to be asked to dress comfortably. I've been into high school. I don't know how they could dress more comfortably, but I guess, yeah.
Okay, and how will gym work?
I'm going to let the principals talk about phys ed in each of their buildings.
So I can start on that. At the elementary level, PE is going to be outside as much as possible. The state recommendations is 10-foot social distancing. They won't be sharing equipment, and any equipment that they do use will be cleaned before the next class comes out. If we do have inclement weather that we can't get outside, if it's thunder and lightning, or, frigidly cold. It's an opportunity for the teacher to provide some health lessons. That's something that we've been talking about in the district for a long time, trying to build some more opportunities for. So in some ways, that'll be an opportunity for that.
At the middle high school, very similar to the elementary schools, our physical education teachers will be taking our students outside as much as possible, 10 feet or more away from each other with social distancing. And I think they'll really be focusing on courses like yoga, Pilates, using one's own body weight, instead of obviously hand weights, walking units. And then when they are inside, focusing more on wellness and personal safety.
Okay. How will band and chorus be addressed?
Then I'll let the principals, that's kind of a specific to the building question.
I can go first for the elementary schools. Band will be done in small classroom cohorts, so you're not mixing groups of kids together. That's another one where the Department of Ed has recommended 10-foot distances. There won't be actual band performances, but the kids will learn to use their instruments, which is such an essential part of getting them ready for middle school and their experiences there. We don't anticipate a full chorus, but we'll have opportunities for singing as the teacher sees fit. Again, remembering those 10-foot distances. All of that's going to happen outdoors as much as possible.
And at Tohoto, that's basically, oh, I'm sorry. At Tohoto, that's basically the same. We can still have band and chorus classes, but we would anticipate being outside as much as possible, following the guidelines to be 10 feet apart and in a straight line rather than a circle. When weather is not permitting, lessons can still be conducted in the classrooms, but rather than singing or playing instruments, there can be lessons that take place, for instance, like music history. So there'll still be lessons taking place.
Will children be allowed to use the playgrounds?
Yes, they will. It'll be one classroom at a time. And between each class is we'll use electrostatic disinfection to clean all of the playground equipment. So.
Will the schools be serving lunch, or is everyone expected to bring their own? And will all tables be sanitized in between lunches?
Yes, schools will be serving lunch. We'll probably start out with the brown bag lunch for students till we get going. And all tables will be thoroughly cleaned between lunches.
Will there be assigned seating spaced out at 6 feet apart?
Yes.
Has a hybrid option been explored to reduce the number of students in a cohort and thus reduce the risk of infection?
Yeah. Yes. That probably should have been taken out, but yes, I think we've answered that a couple of times.
Okay, I think the next one we've also addressed about the hybrid model.
Yep.
If enough parents opt into the remote option, do you plan to still try to use 6-foot spacing?
Yes, we're going to use 6-foot spacing, so we'll just settle on that.
Okay, I think that's the next question is
Yep.
same. This one I think we've answered. Why is the hybrid not in a model? Having everyone in the building at once does not limit contact. So I think we've already addressed that we are looking for a hybrid model.
Yep.
Under hybrid option, will all teachers in a given grade be using the same or similar schedule, particularly as it relates to frequency and length of Zoom calls?
Carol, could you field that one, please?
Sure. I think this one speaks of in the hybrid model, when students are in person, the schedule will follow the regular school schedule that students would typically follow during the school day. The question here about the length of Zoom calls, I think that's in thinking that there will be Zoom calls to students in the remote period, but that would not be happening. So if we went to remote though, for remote, should we have to go out for COVID related issues, then I know the principals have begun to put schedules or time periods together that are reasonable based on the age group that the teacher would be working with as far as the length of time for Zoom calls. I don't know if the principals wanted to add anything on to that.
Nope. Okay. Will high schoolers who choose remote be taught by Tohoto teachers? This is especially important for 11th and 12th graders who will need to be known by Tohoto teachers for recommendations and awards.
Well, the second part of that, it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Diane, is that recommendations can be given by any teacher. But I get what the point here. So will high schoolers who choose remote be taught by Tohoto teachers? No, especially in a cohort model. And this is one of the drawbacks of this kind of cohort model that has A and B. We only have one set of teachers. So if they're teaching one group, then the other group is necessarily at home doing some independent work. Now, if they choose just to be just a remote model, then they will have to enroll into a platform that we choose. That will be again it'll be really student driven again, because we don't have, if the teachers are teaching, and even in a cohort model, they're teaching on Monday and Tuesday, they're also teaching on Thursday and Friday. There's really no time for them to teach the students who are in the remote model. So, and I think there's a question about that later on. I'll get to that.
Okay. Would remote students be able to participate in sports and student council?
I'm not sure about this, and we're going to have to wait for some guidance from the commissioner. If it goes along the lines of a homeschool, then they'd be able to play sports, but they wouldn't be part of school council. So again, we'll have to wait. This is one of the guidelines that hasn't come down yet. So we'll get to that one. We'll keep this question and let you know.
Is the district considering an external online program for those who choose fully remote so they won't be interacting with BBRSD teachers?
Yeah, the Department of Ed released 4 possible platforms yesterday, and we will be choosing one of those within the next couple of days and letting you know. And by the way, these are all come at a cost to the district. They didn't give them to us. I wish they would have. But we have to pay for the seats. And one of the things we're going to do after we get a vote on this hybrid model tomorrow, we're going to begin to reach out again to the community and see if we can get a number on for students who are deciding on remote. We need it for busing. We need it for this purpose to know how many seats we're going to buy or we need to purchase during the year. So look for that next week.
Since it seems that external programs will be used, is the district considering ways to keep these children still feeling connected to the community, or will we be completely on our own and disconnected from peers and staff if we choose this option?
This is a difficult one, and I think it's tied to the question that was asked above, which is, will they be able to participate in sports and extracurricular activities? If that's allowed by the state, then that will give them that connection to the school community. So as soon as we get more of that guidance, we'll let you know. But certainly, just because a family decides they want remote learning for their child, they're still part of our learning community. And so we do want to find ways to keep them involved. So if by chance the commissioner says they would not be allowed to participate in sports, or student council, all those things, we're gonna have to start looking at some ways to keep them involved, because we don't want to lose those students. especially since this will most likely be a temporary thing.
An overarching question I have is whether we will have the ability to switch our choice for schooling as the virus changes. For example, if I choose to have my daughter in the remote option in the fall, can I switch her to in-person at a later date, or are we locked in for the year?
For consistency and for, to kind of have the buildings run normally, and what we're going to ask, they don't have to be locked in for a year, but most of these platforms require at least a 1 semester commitment. So we're going to ask that if you do this, if you decide to have your child learn remotely, that you make that commitment for the entire semester. So that's the answer to that one.
If students have the ability to switch from one learning plan to another at predefined points in the year, end of term or semester, will students coming off the DUSI plan be at the same point academically as students who have attended in-person and/or hybrid? Will there be learning gaps between the two groups and will therefore need to be addressed so as not to slow down or speed through topics?
There'll definitely be learning gaps, especially at the elementary school where they're not on a semester, but these courses are offered by semester, and elementary schools are run in a trimester. Then there's going to be some learning gaps. But it probably wouldn't be much different than a student that transferred in from another school. And that happens all the time. Student comes in, even though it's the same standards, even though they're teaching the same thing, there's always learning gaps. So we'll need to address that, but I can't imagine it not happening.
Okay, there's a question about the parent remote opt-in program. Who will be the teachers for these classes and how much learning will be asynchronous versus synchronous?
Can you read that one again, Christy? I didn't get it
Yeah.
all.
This parent has a question about the parent remote option program. Remote option program. Who will be the teachers for these classes and how much learning will be asynchronous versus synchronous?
As I said, because we don't have extra teachers, obviously, so we'll be choosing plans that are student self-directed. Now, there are some other options that we're exploring. So, for example, there may be some teachers who, because they have medical reasons, cannot come back to school. And if we could utilize them to help those students in the remote learning model, that would be the best thing for the teacher and for the student. Anytime you can have an option where there's a teacher in front of the student somehow, whether it be in person or virtually, that's the best case scenario. And again, that's why we need these numbers. We need the numbers of the teachers who can't come back because of some underlying medical conditions, students who for one reason or another are opting out. Then we can start matching up groups of students with teachers. It's not a perfect solution, but if we're able to do that, it is better than one of these other platforms. So we'll do that as much as possible.
Okay, will opt-in remote learning have flexible hours or will students have to be virtually connected to in-person classes?
I'm not sure about that one either. Once we find a model next week, and we'll definitely have something by early next week, we'll know what their schedule looks like. We'll try to find something that's as flexible as possible. We don't want this to be a hardship for anybody. So we'll try to find the platforms that are most flexible.
What sort of technical support and equipment will be given to staff to make remote learning go smoothly?
I think I'll turn that to Carol and Paul.
Sure. So I think if you were listening the other night in the school committee meeting, I talked about the technology support that's taking place on our website, available to the staff right now, and then to parents and students as well. That really, they're modules created by one of our teachers that train teachers to learn how to use Google Classroom, Google Suite tools, and other types of technology tools that they may want to utilize for their classroom. So we've already begun doing that work. And Paul, I think you want to maybe talk about the equipment.
Right. So again, in terms of technical issues with the equipment, some of that again will be addressed by those videos and having students and parents have access to kind of a FAQ or the things that we are using. In terms of actual devices, for district-owned devices, we will continue to use our ticket system. We'll be asking that either the student or the parent work with their teacher to submit a ticket for that district-owned device. That way we will know that the teacher is aware that there is a problem, so they'll know why remotely maybe the kid is not getting their work done. Actual details on how we're going to do those kind of exchanges are still in the works, but our focus will be to try to minimize the amount of downtime that any student might have with their device. I do want to also add here that we can't maintain non-district owned equipment. That will have to remain in the purview of the parent. Sorry, I have one other thing. We will try to have spares on hand for those situations where, again, if you have a parent-owned or family-owned device and now the student doesn't have access to remote learning, we will try to have spares, short-term loaners, while you're dealing with that, trying to get your device fixed at home.
Okay, what is the sample schedule for someone participating in the remote model?
Again, we'll have that next week. I see there's a lot of questions on that, so we're going to do our best to make sure we have that to you early. I know people are curious about that because you need to make a decision. So again, we just got the platforms yesterday, and everybody hasn't had a chance to look at them, but we'll make a push to get that to you.
As it relates to ensuring all students have access to the internet, it was mentioned on the call that Verizon was offering a special discount or program to address this. However, most families in town are limited to Spectrum only. Is Spectrum planning to offer any relief?
I think
again, I'm going to take this question. The Verizon deal is a wireless hotspot with data, so it's not cable related. So it would be something that can be used by both towns. It's not something that just because you're a Spectrum customer, you wouldn't be able to take advantage of. We are also hoping that Spectrum, in order to stay competitive with Verizon, will be offering some kind of similar program, but their current solution is much higher priced, and they have minimums that we probably would not be able to reach.
The plan outlined by the region specifies a remote option for grades 9 through 12 that seems to be centered around interactions with the student cohort and also K through 5. However, what about the middle school grades 6 through 8?
Diane, could you answer that?
That remote option for 6 through 8 would be the same as the 9 through 12.
Okay. And now we have some questions about transportation. If someone on the bus is positive, does everyone on the bus as well as in the child's class quarantine?
Yes, and as I mentioned earlier, it'd probably be everybody in that school too, because it'd be almost impossible for us to go back and contact trace. And before we do, and by the time we get done, it would probably be connected to every class. It would just be easier to be remote at that point.
How many buses will be needed to have all students in person together? This would be the case with the hybrid model and fully in person, as all students will be present together in all school scenarios being presented.
This question looks like it was sent relative to the hybrid model that was in our original plan. It had one week on fully and 1 week off. And so when we did our bus planning, that's what we were looking at. And we wouldn't need any extra buses because when we looked at based on the fact that when we did the parent survey, we had roughly 100 kids who, or families that said they would not be sending their children back. And we suspected we'd have maybe some additional that we knew for a fact were going to be driving their children to school. So we didn't think we were going to have a problem. We certainly won't under this current cohort model.
With the likely increase of parent drop-offs and pickups, have traffic patterns been looked at?
Yeah, actually we have, again, let me just go back to this other question, 86, now that I'm thinking about it, is that there aren't extra buses. You know, there are no extra buses in the state for us. So again, the option would be to have the buses loop back around and pick additional kids up, which would mean they would come in late. So if we did have a situation where we couldn't fit all our children, we'd have the same amount of buses, additional runs. So this question about traffic patterns, can the principals answer this, please?
Sure, I can start. We're always looking at traffic patterns at Tohoto. But yes, we have looked at it. Sally and I have discussed taking a look at, staggered arrivals and staggered dismissals so that we're not having all of our foot traffic coming in as well as exiting at the exact same time. So we'll also be working with the Boylston Police Department to get their input for the best way to safely bring students into the building and exit students out of the building, as well as the increased traffic flow with parents picking up as well as dropping off. But again, with this hybrid model, it definitely eases things a little bit as far as the amount of traffic coming into the school and exiting in the school each day.
So similarly at BES, we've been having a lot of conversations about drop off and pickup. And, in the past couple of years, we've tried a couple of different formats. Right now I'm looking at a way for parents to drop off at multiple hallways that would require driving around to the back of the building. That way we're limiting the amount of students that are coming in through the main entrance, and we're not creating a bottleneck or congestion there where we're trying to maintain social distance. So the details, once they're all finalized, will come out to parents. But yeah, we're definitely looking for ways to ease it. I think moving to the hybrid model will also help support that, but more information to follow.
And in Berlin, very similarly with this hybrid model, it will certainly ease demand at the end of the day. I think the one change for us will be some social distancing around parent pickup. In the past, all the kids came out at the same time and kind of hung out together till their parents drove up. Obviously, that's not going to work. But we have some plans that we're starting to work through and think through, and as soon as those are firm, we'll share them out.
Christy, do you have another question?
I think you might be muted, Christy.
I think you're muted.
Whoops, sorry. I read that whole thing. I know that many have said they would drive their children to school, but that may not always be possible as other things tend to arise. My daughter's bus last year was actually over capacity. Is the school district taking into account the possibility that parents who said they would drop off their children may not be able to do so for a variety of reasons? Let me give the whole, there's a few questions in this one. The seats I see are assigned, so do we have the capability or capacity of adding buses? And if so, at what cost? Would the morning run start even earlier than the 6:50 pickup time of last year?
Well, first of all, I'm gonna apologize. I could hear Christy in my ears, but I couldn't hear her in the microphone. So I should have picked that up. She was on mute. There's no ability to add buses. There aren't extra buses. And so, again, what would have to happen here if we had we don't have 100% ridership in a normal year. So what would have to happen, as I mentioned earlier, is that the buses would have to go loop back around. But we're going to send something to parents and ask them that, if you're going to drive your children, we really would like you to make a commitment to do this, because we have to set those seats and make sure we're in line with all of the social distancing guidance. At using this cohort model, though, at 50% capacity of students in the building, it probably lowers our ridership to around, 35, 40%. We should have no problem at all. So in this, if you have an issue, again, we try to be flexible. If you know beforehand that you're not going to be able to drive your daughter home, call the school. We're hoping this doesn't happen in the first couple of weeks, that you make the commitment and then you actually stick to that. Once we run through this a couple of weeks, the principals will know if there are empty seats on those buses, and they'll know that if you call and you say, my daughter I can't pick her up, the principal could say, there's a place on the bus for your daughter. So we'll ask for a commitment, but we'll be flexible about it too. We'll monitor how many seats are taken on those buses. So if there's an issue, hopefully we can accommodate you. Under this model, we have a much better chance of accommodating something like that as someone who can't pick their child up or can't drive them that day than we would have under any other model. So.
Okay, substitute teachers often work in many schools and many towns. How do you keep track?
This is difficult because we don't keep track. I know in the elementary schools, I believe they work in just the elementary schools. But at the high school, they have subs that work in other towns. And actually, I think in the elementary schools, they have subs that work in the elementary and then the middle and high school. So when you think about that in terms of, cross-contamination, it becomes a problem, but we need subs. They'll have the same staff checklist that we used for our summer school staff. And we'll ask them to do the same thing. We ask of all our teachers to observe the social distancing protocols and masks and all of that. But we need subs, and there's almost no way to figure out, to track them in that way. So again, we'll do the best we can with it, but it's not a good situation.
Will the district be flexible with the attendance policy so we can keep under the weather kids at home without getting them punished or needing to go to the doctor for everything?
The Department of Ed will have some guidance on this. They talked about it early on. They haven't really had anything, but it was around it was around attendance. It was around the attendance policy, and not because we have to report attendance for all of our students to the Department of Ed. I know at the high school, maybe Diane can expand on it, but they will not be tying attendance to grading, which is one of their policies. Diane, did you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. It's actually, our policy previously had been that attendance was tied to credits. And the recommendation is for this school year, for the 2020-2021 school year, that we do not tie attendance to credits. So that, that is what the change will be for the high school. In the middle school, there are no credits, so attendance was never tied to credits.
I'm sorry, I said tied to grading, it was credits. And we'll try to be flexible throughout the year. We know this is going to be an odd year, so we certainly want to put some protocols in place, but we're going to be flexible with them within the guidelines of the Department of Ed. We still, the commissioner was still insistent that we report. So we have to stay within the guidance.
Will the sick days policy for students be flexible this year to allow students and parents the feeling of safety and being able to keep sick children at home without the fear of repercussions enforced, especially at the middle high school level?
We don't call it repercussions there. We call it personal accountability. Do you want to take that one, Diane?
Thanks, Jeff. So again, because we do have to report attendance to the state, and attendance is directly tied into the district's accountability. We will again be following the Department of Education guidelines surrounding this. Absolutely, I think what the biggest thing is that there is communication. We need to make sure that Sally and I are going to be working on a procedure for parents if their child is homesick, because what we can't do is not hear from a parent or a student for 5 days, and then all of a sudden they show up to school and we have no idea where they have been. So we will be working with on developing procedures for that in a streamlined way for parents to report the status of their student for that day.
Thank you, Diane.
What will a policy be for out-of-state travel? Will students and teachers be expected to quarantine if they or a family member travels to a COVID pandemic area, flies on an airplane, or has out-of-state family stay from a high-risk area?
Again, we'll follow the governor's recommendations. It changes week by week. We don't even know where we'll be at the beginning of the school year. So we'll use that as a guideline, but we'll be flexible. I mean, again, it depends where you go, I guess. So we'll try to be flexible, but we do have to have some guidelines in place to protect the rest of the community.
Will they have to do MCAS on top of all of this year?
Maybe. Right now it's scheduled to happen, but it's possible that the commissioner, he got a waiver last year. MCAS was state law, so it had to pass the legislature last year. So I think it depends how the year goes. So it's scheduled to happen, but we'll see. I think it's a little too early to know for sure.
How will grading work? Will letter grades be used?
I'll let the principals take this one.
I'll start. On the elementary level, we'll still be using the same standards-based report card that we have been using for years. The focus is on mastery of the content areas or in those standards. So whether we're in person, in hybrid, or in remote, we're still looking for that same mastery of content.
At the middle high school, same thing, regardless if we are hybrid or remote, our grading practices will go back to how they were prior to COVID. The only change will be at the middle school level. All electives at the middle school level will be pass-fail. However, the passing grade, we are looking at somewhere right around a passing grade to be a 75, a numerical grade of a 75. So we will work on that with the middle school, but our letter grading will go back to pre-COVID.
Once plans are decided, are we just going to get an email with rules and guidelines and that's it until the start of school? Will we use that email to decide our children's school year?
We're hoping to have a lot more for you than just an email with rules and guidelines. Again, I just want to thank you all for being patient. A lot of this information is coming to us in, dribs and drabs, and we don't even have all the guidance, but as soon as we get it, we try to get it out to you. But certainly once we decide on a plan, that takes a big piece of this off the table, and we can start, once we get a plan for the hybrid in place, once we get a remote learning model in place, parents will have a much better idea of what they want to do in the fall. And again, you got to be flexible. If we're going to open with a hybrid and the state spikes, then we're going to have to switch gears. I don't think there's any way around that. So I appreciate your patience. We all do. But it will not just be an email with rules and guidelines. So stay tuned.
While I realize information is ever changing and limited from the state, much more needs to be done to inform the community. Going forward, we need weekly updates of protocols, procedures, and information.
Yeah, one of the things that we did in the spring was we had the weekly updates. And I think we had a lot of feedback on that, very positive feedback. So we're going to continue to do that. We took a break for the summer, but we're going to start those up soon. And we'll probably continue those even past COVID. I think people like getting those, just a quick brief every Friday of what's going on in the district. They're a good idea. If there's not an update, we don't have an update, you see a blank, you haven't missed anything. So we will continue those shortly, and we'll probably continue those well after the pandemic. They're just a good communication.
How will the before and after school care be run?
We continue to wait for state guidance on this, but we might not be able to run these programs this year. That my feeling is that we are not going to be able to run them, but there should be some guidance out pretty soon.
What about out of district school choice students? If something happens having kids in 2 different districts in multiple different schools, we get to the point where things aren't working and we need to move to home learning for 1 or more children till this settles down. Do we lose our spot in the district completely?
Oh, that's an interesting one. No, you do not. Once you're accepted as a school choice student, you're one of our students, and you have all of the rights and privileges and responsibilities of one of our students. So you do not lose your place in the district under that scenario you just talked about.
How will students with specialized services be kept safe, as well as their teachers, when physical distancing cannot be maintained?
Karen, could you field this one, please?
So absolutely, the staff and student safety is our first priority. And sometimes with some of our students, we have to do toileting, we have to do hand over hand. And so we want to make sure that they're protected. So we want to make sure that there is a barrier between the teacher and the student of some sort. So for that, we've purchased gowns, masks, gloves, eye protection to wear. We've also purchased some plexiglass screens so they can be close by. We actually used it over the summer to do testing with some of our students so that there was a physical barrier between them, but they could still sit close enough to look at materials together and things like that. So we're looking at ways to make sure that we limit any kind of direct contact between students and staff.
What would a remote learning day look like for a student with an IEP?
Karen, could you take that one also?
Sorry, I was on mute. Each student's IEP is different, so it's hard to say there's one particular plan for a student or one answer to that question. So they would follow their schedule for their class, if for the times that they're included in their class. Special ed supports would be in place either remotely. We've had some students during the summer program today. We had students doing OT in the back of the room on a computer, which sounds impossible, but works very well. So whenever possible, we'll limit the extra staff going in. We may do it remotely. Sometimes staff will come in, but we'll have to monitor that and kind of keep that to as small a number of people coming into the classroom as possible.
What has the federal money given to public schools, as well as the $225 per pupil enrolled, been used to purchase? Other schools have used the money for, among other things, additional nurses, custodians, enhanced PPE for every student and staff member, outdoor tents for learning space and mask breaks, and additional space and personnel for child care for staff and families if operating a hybrid cohort model.
So again, the Department of Ed provided us with some money and a list of PPE that we were required to buy. We were actually required to buy a minimum of 12 weeks at 100% capacity for our students. And so it was the same thing: gowns, face shields, hand sanitizer, mask, gloves. Our remote learning platform will be paid for out of that money. We're in the process of hiring tutors. One of the things we know has happened is because of the way last spring went, there will be a big learning gap. And one of the first things we have to do in terms of academics is closing that gap before we move on. So we're in the process of hiring tutors for a 6 to 8 week period to help out in the schools, just to help the teachers get caught up with our students. So that's basically what we used it for.
How many preschoolers are in each class, and will they be socially distanced 6 feet apart?
Karen?
So in a typical preschool class, there are 15 students. In the hybrid model that Jeff and Carol have been working on with the staff, we're going to have to change that. We'll have to prioritize special education students who need to be there. And so there'll probably be less students actually in the classroom. The 6 foot distancing is a challenge. We gave students little areas that they got to play in, and they could see each other today, and they did fairly well, but I think we need to keep the numbers as low as we can in those preschools.
How many staff members will be in the preschool room?
Karen?
Okay, so traditionally there's a teacher and an aide, and if a student has a one-on-one aide, they might be in there with them. We've decided the teens are not going to be in the Tohoto program because that's too many students. We're going to look at other online options for the teens so that they continue to work towards their certification and hopefully do some planning and some remote work that'll be used in the preschool. So the numbers will be limited for next year.
Will preschoolers be wearing masks?
I think that's our change, that all students will be asked to wear masks. I will tell you today, when the students were in for the extended school year program, it was really nice to see all of the preschoolers wearing the masks, and most of them stayed on without too many problems. So it was actually better than we expected today.
Will preschoolers be allowed to play with their peers?
Yes, they'll be allowed to play with their peers, but in a very different way. So that, you know, they will be socially distant. They'll be having their games separate. The teachers are looking at creative ways to have them play and still stay 6 feet apart. Really difficult with preschool students, quite honestly, but they did a really nice job of that today. You know, every child had a rug and their blocks were on the rug, and they didn't share their blocks. And at the end of the day, we cleaned all of the blocks. So they're looking at great ways to make that happen and still have some interaction, because as you know, preschool is all about play and learning through play.
How will toys be shared in the preschool room, and who will be cleaning the toys after each child plays with one?
So same thing, the students can share toys if they are cleaned in between, but they need to be cleaned, and there needs to be 15 minutes of dry time before they're safe. So it's realistically not going to happen during the day. So every child was assigned different toys. They weren't sharing them. At the end of the day, we cleaned everything. So that's what we'll be doing for the school year.
Will the preschool room be properly cleaned after each session? There are 2 sessions, morning and afternoon, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yes, we talked about that it'll be cleaned in between the 2 sessions. There's a break in that time, enough time for anything to dry. So it'll be cleaned by the custodial staff in between.
Are teachers allowed to have contact with or work one-on-one with my preschooler? Will there be any close contact by a teacher?
So we are trying our very best to keep them 6 feet apart, but there are times when students need hand over hand and they need physical assistance. And again, that's why we've purchased all of the PPE. We've trained all of the staff on how to use it. And when the full year staff come back, we'll train them as well on how to use it effectively. And so they will be able to be in contact with the students if the student needs help. But we're going to try and avoid that as much as possible.
Okay, and I think you might have touched on this, Karen. Do you feel a hybrid would work? This is for preschoolers. And will the high schoolers be in the preschool for their child development classes?
Right. We said the teens will not be part of the classes for the coming year until things change for us. And the hybrid model, I think, is where we're going. And so Jeff and Carol have been working with the union today to kind of develop that. And I think the preschool is one of the pieces that we're going to have to look at cutting our cutting our numbers in the preschool in order to make that happen effectively.
Okay, and one more on the preschool section. Will there be backpacks brought in or snacks and drinks?
So I think backpacks have to come in. Kids will need extra masks. They'll need extra clothes. We'll try and make sure that the storage of those backpacks is done very carefully. Snacks is a challenge because older kids, we can say no to snacks, but the younger kids really need those morning snacks. What they did today is they had paper placemats, which are also known as paper towels, and so that they didn't touch the table at all. And then everything was cleaned right after they had their snack. We'd like to have them eating outside, quite honestly, whenever possible, too.
Okay, given the plan for increased use of outdoor space at the school, what is or can be done to ensure the safety of the staff and students when they are outside? I assume there are already safety measures in place as occasionally students go outside during the day for PE, recess, etc. Will these measures be changed or increased at all if more students are outside or in different places outside?
Yeah, and we have safety protocols in place when classes leave the building, but we do anticipate students being out of the building more. And of course, you have these big tents out there, which even draws more attention. So we've been working on that. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to ask the police departments if they would do additional patrols around the schools. I know, for example, the Boylston police have been doing, last year started additional patrols around the back of the building during the day in places that they normally may not go. So we're still working to on those plans, but we do have safety plans in place for teachers for classes who leave the building. So we'll continue to work on that.
If a senior opts for the remote learning option, will they receive their diploma from Tohoto and graduate with their Tohoto 2021 class, or do they officially receive a diploma from some other online school?
If they decide to go remote and they are using a remote platform that we give them or we offer, then they will graduate with the Tohoto graduation class. And I only say that because there are exceptions. Some of these charter schools, these online charter schools, you can enroll in. When you enroll in them, you have to unenroll from the school, which means you're no longer part of the Tohoto High School, in which case they would not graduate with their class. And I think parents need to be aware of that if they enroll their children in one of those charter type schools. So, but if they just use the platform that we're going to recommend, they will graduate with their class.
How does the school plan to prep kids for college admissions? Previously, they had held assemblies and had in-person meetings with the guidance team.
Diane, you want to take this one?
Sure. Sally and I have been in contact with the counselors over the summer, and they have been keeping up to date with AP, PSATs, as well as the college admissions counselors. And we will be providing a combination of virtual meetings. Our seniors usually have our college admissions rep actually physically come to the school. These will be done virtually, and we'll have online signups for those as well. And also the counselors, Eileen Rodman, will be going into classrooms with small cohorts of students to provide assistance as well. And she'll also be scheduling both in person as well as virtual conferences with each senior as well as their parents.
If we start the year with a full return, what would the remote plan be when inevitably groups begin quarantining due to outbreaks? Would they be taught by a BBRSD teacher during those mandatory quarantines?
So I've heard this question a couple times, and I limited it to this question, the same question a few times. Again, there's got to be a distinction between the two remote plans we're offering. If you opt out of coming back to school, your child will have a remote plan in which it will be very limited, if any, interaction with the teacher. It will be self-directed. And that's because while your child is online, his teacher will be teaching a class, and we don't have extra teachers. So I talked about that a little earlier. If there's an outbreak, or for some other reason we just decided to go to a full remote, maybe there's not an outbreak, but the cases in town get so high that we decide to do that. In that case, the BBRSD teachers will be in front of your students teaching remotely, because they also will be in a remote setting. So there are two kinds of remotes, and I've heard the question a couple times, and I think there are parents who believe that if they opt out of coming back to school, they will have a remote plan in which one of our teachers will be in front of the student, and that is not likely to happen. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible, but even then, it would be a teacher that can't come back for medical reason, and they're in more of a tutoring sort of mode, especially at the high school. At the elementary, it's a little easier. They're certified in all levels, and at the high school, it becomes a little tricky because they specialize. So that's the answer to that one.
Is this school hiring more buses to maintain social distancing? What is the maximum amount of students per bus?
This is the question we answered earlier.
Yeah.
Under the current cohort model, we should have no problems with buses, and we'll probably have seats left over. Given that we probably have about 50 or 60% ridership on a good day. And then we have a number of students who aren't going to come back. So we shouldn't have any problem with this.
Okay.
We will not be hiring extra buses. There aren't any.
Okay, and I think you touched on this one as well, but the question is, if using the cohort A and B model for Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday, who will be instructing the students for the days at home if the teachers are teaching the other cohort?
Yeah, I did touch on that. On the days that the students are home, they will be doing independent work.
Okay. There will be different protocols in place. Will there be different protocols in place to allow for limited shutdown in the event of a positive case rather than a full shutdown?
I'm not sure what a full shutdown means. I probably wouldn't go any less than a full school. I can see not closing down the entire district, that's for sure. But again, the contact tracing in a school is so difficult because even in this kind of situation, when you try to limit contact, there are times during the day when students from different grades interact. So it's almost unavoidable that there will be some contact throughout the day between different levels of students. So that's why I continue to say, if there is a shutdown, you would like to just shut down a grade or 2 grades and have those go remote with the teacher. But the reality is that won't happen. It'll probably be, if you get a case in a school, it'll probably be the entire school, but most likely not the entire district. Unless you have one of the questions earlier talked about having 2 siblings. One is tested positive, has symptoms, and the other one comes to school, and they're in different schools. In that case, you would most likely shut 2 schools down.
Would the school district consider putting in desk barriers and plastic dividers to help with contamination, if this would help parents and teachers feel better?
No, there was some guidance on this recently to say that those kind of barriers cause more contamination, and because of that, they're more surface contamination because kids touch them and they're difficult to clean. I think some of you may have seen some very creative teachers who use pipe and shower curtains. Almost impossible to clean. So, and also there were some districts in the schools are old, and they can't allow for flexible seating. So we won't do that. We should be okay.
If the school is required to move to full remote at any point, how much time can parents expect students to have direct interaction with primary teachers a day? Will specials or electives in middle school also be required to have direct contact with the student base during the week?
I'm going to turn it to the principals if I can.
So at the middle high school, our schedule will be the same, regardless if we are hybrid or if we are all remote. We are working on plans with the teachers regarding remote and the amount of direct instruction, but every class will be begun with a face-to-face meeting remotely if the entire school is remote. But we are changing our schedule to a 4-period, 5-day schedule with 2 of those days rotating through our 7 periods. Sorry, it's my dog. And at the middle school, the middle school, all students, as I said before, will have a variety of electives. And I believe it works out, and Sally, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it works out to each one of our specials, each student having each one of our specials once per week.
At the elementary level, the schedule is much more classroom-based and teacher-driven. The thing we have spent a lot of time working on is the specials, art, music, physical education, Ms. Tisseri. And Mr. Thompson and I are working because we share some staff to make sure the kids get as much of that experience as possible. Obviously, if they're only in school 2 days a week, they're not going to get all 5 subjects every week, but we're working to find an equitable solution there.
Okay, do we have to wait a full trimester at BES to change our option? 3 months is a long time if either return to school is not going well or an increase in COVID-19 cases, or the state program is not going well with our child. Could we change our minds after 1 month?
The short answer is no. We are asking for a commitment of at least one semester. Changing in the middle or partway through, it becomes disruptive to the school environment. And the other thing is, and those online platforms, they're designed so that students have, a connected body of learning within that course, and that becomes a disruption too when you leave in the middle. In addition to that, those seats, we have to buy them individually. So we'll have to pay for that seat. That's additional money for the seats. So we're asking for a commitment. That's typically, you don't need to commit for a year, but at least a semester.
I'd like to interrupt for a moment the flow here. Christy, can you give me a sense of how many more prepared questions there are?
There are 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, okay. The reason I ask is, I'm cognizant of the hour, and I of course want to make sure those questions get answered. And I'm been trying to read the chat while this has been going on, and I don't think I've done a very good job. But there may be some questions that, if other school committee members have been watching the chat, if there's a question that was asked that you thought should be addressed, I'd like you to let me know that. Okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt the flow, Jeff, but I just kind of wanted to make sure that we had a little time.
We could have answered 3 questions in that time.
All right. I can come up with several if you'd like.
All right, go ahead, Christy.
Okay. Is there going to be a strict recommendation for K-1 to wear masks? Yes.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I believe that's one of the things we're going to vote on. And, it's also an equity question, and I think it's right. So, yes. Unless the school committee votes no, but I think they're going to vote yes.
Okay. And can we have some interaction with the teachers and classmates if we decide to do the state-run program? Even a short meeting 1 to 2 times a week to check in could be very, very beneficial.
We're going to have to think a little bit more about this one. I don't have the answer. I think some of this is going to be decided by the state within the next week or 2. But again, it does become a disruption to the actual students and the classroom teachers who are working, the teachers who are working in the classroom with those students. We'll do our best, but I think really I would defer to the teachers on this one to see how much disruption they think it's going to be. It doesn't disrupt my life, but it may there. So I'm going to defer to the teachers on this one, and we'll get back to you. And the principals who are going to be in there.
Okay, and I think we've touched on this subject as well regarding HVAC. Is the air quality going to be tested at the schools? And what is the current system at BES?
It will be tested. We're looking into it, and we'll certainly make repairs by the time the school's open. And the system at BES is a univent. I sort of described at least the high level from what I can understand about it, but it pulls the air from the inside. That's why we tell teachers like to put the books on those, cover the vents in the winter. I know I used to do that, but when you do that, it disrupts the flow in the classroom. But that is taken directly from outside. We'll make sure they're all working properly.
Can the class sizes be shared by school and grade level?
Only we don't know exactly because it's not uniform, but I think I shared with you, BES would be average under the cohort model, average with 6 feet spacing or more. BES would be 8 to 11 students per class, BMS 7 to 10 students per class, and Tohoto 4 to 14. And I think Diane did some additional, talked about some additional stuff with that.
Okay, and that was the final question I have on the submitted parent questions.
I do see some questions on the chat here. If you want me to just go down, we do have some time left here. Do you want me to do that, Cliff, or?
Yes, I think, Jeff, if you can do that, that would be helpful. There may be some new issues raised that weren't raised in the prepared questions. Although my casual observation is that many of the chat questions you've already answered.
Yeah.
So
All right, let's see.
do your best.
Why are we putting effort into hybrid if we will close when one child gets COVID? Why is it not more efficient to start remote versus hybrid? Well, our teachers are pretty good now at remote, but they're still better at teaching in person. They've been doing that their entire careers, and that's still where most of the learning happens, when the child is in front of the student, in front of the teacher. So the more time we can have with the children in school, it's better for their academics, it's better for their social emotional well-being. So any additional days we can do that, any days they can be in the school together, see each other again, sort of renormalize the situation, the better. The other problem with remote, and I talked about this earlier, is if you have remote learning, there's going to be no sports. Even if everybody else is doing it, there's no sports, there's no extracurricular, and remote is the numbers you have are tied to budgeting. So we want to be in school as much as possible. Second question, will BBRSD be using a learning platform that DESE will be offering at a discount, and have they released the name of that platform? Yeah, I'm not sure about this discount part, that's for sure. I've seen the prices of it. And yes, we will be using them. They released 4. We'll be deciding on one. We'll give you the name next week for sure. And they may actually be posted on the site. You might be able to see them. I think there were 2 charter schools, and 2 just independent platforms. And again, the charter schools are already about 1,000 students oversubscribed. They have an enormous waiting list. And again, you go to a charter school, you're not a part of BBRSD anymore. And so we want to keep our students. Let's see, testing for COVID isn't free. Will the state or school district be paying for kids to get tested if they show symptoms? We have not budgeted for that. And the state talked earlier about possibly funding tests. I know it came up in the chat with the commissioner, and there really is no answer on that yet. What are the medical reasons for a student not to wear a mask? Medical professionals are saying that there aren't really any health conditions where a person would not be able to wear a mask. People get the same percentage of oxygen flow with a mask on. I'm not a doctor, I can't answer that. If a student comes in with a teacher has a medical reason, they have a note from the doctor, and we'll certainly make sure it's valid, but I'm not in any position to question that. Can a parent opt out of in-school learning and have a child do remote only? Yes, they can. We talked about that. We will provide a platform. Again, please be advised that that platform, in the scenario you did, just this one sentence, will be more of a student-directed scenario. So if you want your child to have interaction with a live teacher, remote learning, a remote option would not give them that. And so I just wanted to let you know that, make sure everybody's clear on it. I don't know the answer to that one. How is this meeting posted? How is this meeting posted? Was an email sent to parents? I don't know.
I can tell you it was posted on our website, on both towns' websites and social media. I contacted all of the PTOs with a link, the BEF. They posted it all on their social media websites. And the item also posted it on their website and their Facebook page.
Okay. If I don't read your question, contact me directly. I'll give you the answer. It's kind of, those questions are long and kind of complicated, but you can email me those if you want. Any thoughts on having K-1 full-time within a hybrid model due to the nature of learning at this level? Other districts are doing that. Yep, we did talk about that. You know, one of the things we really want to do is make sure that special education students, our high needs students, have the most in front of teacher time possible. So we are looking at it, but it probably will not happen at K and 1, maybe pre-K, and definitely with the high needs special education students. So Mass be off. I may have missed it. Will Mass be off for recess and outdoor phys ed? Who will be doing the frequent high surface cleaning? I believe they will be off, just nod yes, principals, if I'm doing outdoor recess and outdoor phys ed. Okay. Who will be doing the high frequency cleaning? I'm guessing this is tied to the recess question. The custodians will be using the electrostatic sprayer, and it'll take no time at all. And again, one of the benefits of this sprayer is that, you know, if you grip your hand on one of those bars, you spray it with electrostatic sprayer, it will get to the other side that you can't possibly get with just a spray bottle. It'll be much more effective and dries quickly, be ready for the next class. If we choose full remote, but then our school chooses and goes to a full remote model long-term, can parents then switch to remote learning with Boylston schools, or we still have to wait until the semester? You'd still have to wait. That's a tricky question. You'd still have to wait to the semester, and that's because the consistency of learning that's going on in the in-person learning will then continue in the remote model, and your child is going to be out of sequence if you go from the remote learning model platform to the Boylston schools. I think I touched on that. If we choose to return our children to the building after having them learn remotely for a semester or trimester, how will the school handle additional students in terms of spacing? I don't think it's going to be a problem. We have enough to put sofas for every one of them in there. If we in a cohort, we should not have any problem at 6 feet. Matter of fact, I think Mr. Thompson touched on it. We probably could get out to 7 or 8 feet if we used a cohort. We really have some good spacing in the cohort model. If you know this cohort model is AB, it does have some drawbacks, but it does have one advantage, is that the spacing between students, we can get way beyond the 6 foot recommendation, and that's good. The full remote is a full remote outline. If we switch from hybrid to full remote, is the full remote outlined in the posted model? I believe it is. Miley, you have long questions. You have to just email me, I'll answer them. Will the current plans in any way impact school choice students? Not the current ones. I don't know what next year will look like. I haven't even thought about that. That's a good question. It will not affect current school choice children, not at all. Again, once the principals make the recommendation, school committee votes on that. If you become a school choice student, you are one of our students. You have all of the same, rights and privileges. So if you're in, you're in. The parents to share with their children. Okay. How will you be handling mass breaks? Do the principals want to talk about this? How are you going to handle them? I'm not quite sure on it.
Well, so the conversation I've had with the return committee is, would get the kids up out of their seats, socially distant, line them up 6 feet apart, take them outside. Each classroom teacher is going to have a square area on the field that will be their area, and the kids will be able to get out there and take their masks off, take a break, and then come back in. Of course, they'll be washing their hands before and after those breaks. Anytime that they're touching the masks, they'll be practicing proper hand sanitation.
And before somebody asks, they will be taught how to take their masks on and off as well.
So at the middle high school, same protocols regarding hand washing and or sanitizing and teaching students the appropriate ways to take masks on and off. As far as the mask breaks and the frequency, we are looking at scheduling every hour. We'll be working with the faculty to determine spaces outside for both the middle school as well as the high school.
Just saw something from the chat come up. Yes, Jody, we do realize we live in New England and we have snow and rain. We're going to try to work around that and get the kids out of school, out into the open as much as possible. And we are in New England, so we are a little bit tougher than everybody else in the country. So it's a little cold. We can get out there. Let's see. Will mental health and other assessments be available for students who are remote opt-in? Will supports be available if there are any new identified issues? That's a really good question. Assessments, like you might be talking about, if you're talking about special ed assessments, they're required by law and we will continue to do those. You're welcome. Yeah, we'll continue to do those. As far as mental health, that's a really good question. Karen, maybe you don't have to answer, just make a note of this. It would be really great if we could find a way to work with those students too.
Can I add something to that, Jeff?
Yeah, you might have even thought about this. Go ahead.
So we have already purchased a mental health screener for all students because we're worried about everybody coming back. It's really a kind of survey form. We can do it whether we're remote or in person. Our counseling staff worked on this in the spring and identified it, and we used some of our grant funds to buy it. So we'll be doing that with all students, as well as having some conversations with parents, because we are worried about the mental health of these students as they come back. The counselors will be going into classrooms during the first weeks to talk with students in groups. They're also going to do pull-out smaller groups for our students who need more support. So they have a whole tiered approach to providing some mental health support, because we think that many kids will be having some struggle. Just coming back in the building can be a little bit of a struggle. So we've got those pieces in place.
Okay, thank you for that. I was under the impression that it couldn't be done remotely. So, okay, thank you. I learned something there. How much does future funding from the state factor into any decision to bring students back to the classroom? And has the state suspended the minimum attendance requirements in 2021 to receive flatline pre-COVID funding in 2022 and beyond? Well, classroom, the amount of the kids we have, students we have in a district is tied to funding, and it's what I start talking about with remote learning. If we start losing students to private schools, they've had, I think I mentioned the other night, the Fall River schools are opening, the parochial schools are opening full enrollment, and they've had to turn people away, and that's happening throughout the state. So we want to keep all of our students, and that's why I talk about this remote, giving them as many options as possible to interact with our students, I mean the students who are in school, to keep them connected. We don't want our students going anywhere. I am not sure about the how the minimum attendance requirement is going to be connected to pre-COVID funding in 2022. We can check on that. What's, is PPE being professionally fitted? Also, it was mentioned that KN95 masks were purchased in May. It has been in the news that some of the KN95s coming to this country in May were defective. Has BBRSD tested the new KN95s at an independent laboratory to ensure they meet current standards? I'm pretty sure I would have known about that, so I don't think that happened. Karen, I know you purchased some of those early on. Can you address any of this, or is this something we have?
Sure. It's the same as any nurse uses in the hospital or anywhere else. They're not always professionally fitted or anything else. They're considered safe. They're all rated and tested. They come from a legitimate medical supplier that we've purchased them all for. I'm sure there's another level of really, professionally fitted and higher level of supplies, but this is what was recommended to us from DEAS, and so that's what the nurses worked with us. Well, we picked all of this and they decided what was the appropriate equipment to have.
Thank you, Karen. Will parents be able to look at the remote model being offered before we make choices for our students? Absolutely. Like I said, we just got it. We just got the guidance yesterday. We'll make a big push to get it out to you early next week, and you can take a look at it if possible. We might be able to get a test site from the company up. They might even have one that you can go in and play around with it. Some of them, one or two, we're familiar with one of them, I know for sure. So, okay. Why wouldn't you just allow the students to interact with the class via video link in a normal class if they had to remain at home? This seems like a simple solution to keep the students engaged with the teacher in class versus the standalone, unguided, self-supervised models. That's a good question. There are some privacy issues around that, and so we've been advised not to do that. We don't have the technology to do it. We probably would have purchased it otherwise, but it's mostly these privacy issues. Is the phased approach proposed by the teachers union being considered at all? What phased approach? Phased approach, phased approach. I'm trying to think of what we talked about. I almost got to the last question too. Let's see. Let me answer this last one. I'll get back to this one. How will cohort A and B be decided? Is it by last name? Let's see. It's probably the principals who are going to do that. Have you thought about this? I know some parents had asked questions like, I have 2 children. Will they be? I'd like them to be in the same cohort so I can work. I know for sure that ACE had some of these conversations early on. It's difficult to do. ACE, do you want to just expand on that, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, the principals and I touched base today. We haven't come to any conclusions yet. There's talk about doing by alphabet because that solves some problems, but it also creates some other ones. We've also talked about like bus routes and geography because sometimes you'll end up with families that have different last names and might not end up in the same group. I know there's also special ed considerations. We want to make sure that we're maximizing the supports that we're able to give to those students. So that's going to be a longer process. And I think part of what we're waiting for is to see who will be returning in the fall. I think that's a big domino to fall before we can kind of finalize. But I do, Jeff, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel pretty strongly that I'm going to do everything I can to keep families together. Especially, and that's going to be tricky, especially across buildings. But it should be very easy, relatively easy in my building. But I know that I have a lot. I went through the list just the other day with Michelle, and the amount of kids we have in 4th and 5th grade that have siblings at Tohoto, significant. So, but that's something that is at the forefront of my mind, and I know the principals and I have already had conversations about it.
Any other input? Okay, I got some clarification and someone just jogged my memory on what the phased-in approach was, is starting remote and moving to hybrid. Under the proposed hybrid model that we're looking at, no, we did not consider the phased-in approach. And the models that we talked about the other night, I probably would have considered it a little bit more. But I think, when you think about this, you only have 2 days with students, and then you have a 10-day run up, and then 2 days with students. So it has not been considered with this model. That's the short answer. I want to thank you for all those I'm reading the chats. Someone was talking about the swivel cameras. We did look at the swivel cameras. I know Paul looked at them. They have had some problems too, some technical problems. But that's the camera that they put it in a class that's supposed to follow the teacher around. So just so you know. That's all the questions. Cliff, I think we got through everything.
Well, I think you did. I'd like to make note, though, there was a suggestion in the chat that I particularly liked. I believe it was from Michelle Murray, and she said, talked about it being helpful if a video could be put together that could be shared, that parents could share with their children, about what to expect when they get to school under these different conditions, to give them, which would give the children an opportunity to think about that in advance, and the parents will be able to have a conversation with them about it in advance. So I'm not an expert in video, so thanks, Michelle Murray. Maybe someone could reach out to her and find out if she has some experience and could give some advice on that.
I bet she does.
I mean, I think that's a swell idea.
It will be creative too. I can guarantee you that.
Good production values.
I want to thank everybody for allowing us this time to answer your questions. If I didn't get to your question, there was someone in there that had some really long question. You can call me too. You can give me a call. It might be easier just to talk to me about it than to email and then you don't get your question answered. So I want to make sure everybody's questions get answered. And please attend the school committee meeting tomorrow, and you'll see the vote. We'll talk a little bit more about the hybrid plan. And I just want to mention one thing. There was a calendar vote from the school committee. I think I mentioned this earlier. And we will ask them to re-vote on a slightly different model tomorrow. So that's it.
Am I allowed to say anything?
Well, it's a school committee meeting, of course.
I just wanted to kind of reiterate something Jeff sort of said at the beginning about how we appreciate everyone's flexibility and participation and patience. But one thing I want to emphasize is no matter how the school committee votes tomorrow night, how we vote is not binding. So school actually starts 6 weeks from now. So right now, the state is coming out with positivity rates per town, which is great. And they just posted yesterday, Berlin's positivity rate right now is 0% with 0 positive cases in the last 14 days. Boylston is 1 positive case in the last 14 days. So right now their positivity rate is 0.81%. Those are the kind of data points that we as a district will be looking at to decide, are we really gonna go start hybrid on September 14th? Or at what point are we gonna go fully remote regardless of any positive cases? So I just wanted to, we'll keep re-emphasizing that things will be amended, and it's an ongoing process that we're all working on, but I just wanted to re-emphasize that. I'm sure Jim will emphasize it again tomorrow night at the school committee meeting.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that I was going to ask, so tomorrow I would ask the school committee to vote on the plan as written, pending further guidance. to account for stuff from the Department of Ed, which we have, and then there might be some more negotiation things that go on that we have to add in there, so.
Okay, any other members want to say anything? Okay, I want to thank all of the parents and community members who joined us this evening. Your questions were thorough, and even your chat questions were thorough. So thank you for all of that. It helps committee members to hear what you're thinking, what your concerns are, what your worries are, so that we can fold that into our thinking about what Jeff is going to propose. As I don't have children in the schools here, I'm a grandparent, and my grandchildren go to 2 different school systems. And so I'm not connected to the parent community in the same way that some other school committee members are. And I know I appreciated hearing the questions and the concerns and hearing Jeff and the administrative team's responses to that live and in person tonight. I thought that was very helpful for my thinking, and I'm sure it's very helpful for others as well. I say this to my friends and relatives all the time. What school personnel, school committees, and parents are trying to do is solve the unsolvable problem. We are faced with an unsolvable problem here, and yet everyone is doing their darndest to come up with a solution for all of our children. And I admire the work that has been done. I respect the work that has been done. And I hope that everyone in the community knows that everyone is doing their best to make the best decision for all of our children. But quite frankly, we don't really know what the best decision is for all of our children. So thank you for tonight. Thank you, administration. You've done a great job this evening. Thank you, parents, for your thoughtful questions. And with that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you, Susan. All those in favor? I'm gonna have to do a roll call, don't I? Forgot about that. Susan?
Aye.
Angelo?
Aye.
Keith, you here?
Aye.
Thank you. Lori? And I'm aye as well. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.